Welcome back to TrueNAS Tech Talk on episode 10. Hey, we've made it to the double digits here, Chris, in our episode count.
Celebrate.
And we're over 500 subscribers. So, hey, thanks to everybody who's been tuning in over the past few months to help Chris and I make this a successful podcast. Hey, if you're not subscribed already, feel free to click the button below, like this video, ring the notification bell, do all those usual YouTube things to help us, get that positive feedback and make sure that we can keep on doing this in the future. So today, Chris and I are going to respond to some of that feedback we received on the TrueNAS Community Edition announcement. Chris, I think you got another update for us on Incus support, and maybe we'll do a little bit of current events. I mean, we had CES earlier this week. We can talk about the new, hardware that's been announced and all of the rumors surrounding that. And, I did experiment a little bit with Linux over the vacation as well. And, who knows, maybe 2025 can be at least the year of the Linux gaming desktop. What do you think?
Well, at least the year we convert you. Come on, you can do it. You can make it.
I'm waiting on one very specific thing from Valve. Come on, guys, let's see Deckard. I want my VR headset. I want my Linux native VR. Let's bring it out.
Excellent. Well, yeah, this is going to be great. A lot of exciting stuff to talk about today. I know things we're both passionate about as well. So I guess let's start with the big news about the Fangtooth and Community Edition, the blog announcement that went out the other day.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Fangtooth is going to be the introduction of the new branding names of TrueNAS, which of course is TrueNAS Community Edition and Enterprise Edition. So yes, that means that the differentiators of core and scale are going away. The big thing to answer is, of course, that TrueNAS is remaining free. It's part of why we did that change to GPL earlier. So TrueNAS Community Edition is going to remain the full-featured free version. We're not going to be limiting Community Edition. You're not going to see things like a capacity restriction or some arbitrary hardware shutoff like that. All of the features that exist in TrueNAS Core and Scale right now will continue to do so, and we're going to continue to update them as time goes on. We do naturally have that separate enterprise level feature set that's used to support the IX system business and ensure that we can all keep working on TrueNAS. But so far, I think, Chris, we've done a pretty good job in striking that right balance and keeping a lot of things on the community side that matters to the vast majority of home users and even our more heavy-duty home labbers.
Absolutely. I mean, TrueNAS through and through is very enterprise, and we do a good job, I think, of giving everyone, especially on the free side, access to all those enterprise goodness. Now, again, granted, there's always going to be some special things we have to do on the paid side of the product, the enterprise appliances that make our business go. It's how we get paid. It's how we're able to bring you this awesome software. One I think misconception about open source is that it just happens for free. And I'm sorry, that is not the case. Not good open source anyway. There's some cool ones out there. Maybe people do it in their spare time. But when you get to a project anywhere near as complex as TrueNAS, releasing essentially what's a whole OS package as an appliance, I mean, that takes dedicated resource time and money. We can't all do this on our weekends. But all that said, we're super happy to be able to release the Community Edition. It's something we see supporting, well into the future. We don't ever see that going away. And again, it's all GPL. That was very intentional. We've touched on that in a previous episode when some folks were wondering why we switched from the BSD license. So again, all positive here is how I look at it.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll just go into maybe addressing some concerns, some feedback that we saw in response on the forums, on socials, on Reddit. So a lot of people asked, they said, hey, is this like a situation where we're splitting the image? Is this two separate streams of TrueNAS? Is there a separate build for community, a separate build for enterprise?
Someone mentioned another product, I won't mention the name here, that I guess had historically done that and split the editions. And then, of course, the Community Edition languished over time. Well, I want to reassure folks that's not the case here. It's the same release as it always has been. It's scale, but with some new badges on it. So it says Community Edition. But for those who don't know, maybe you've not paid attention or just not realized, it's one image. The software image we push for Community Edition or Scale today is the image that you run on the enterprise appliances as well. It's not like we're maintaining a fork or a separate version. It's not one of those open source arrangements where we only release 70% of it and then the other bits are like you got to pay to get access to the images. It's the same software. So naturally, if there's updates, fixes, things that we need to put out, it's going to hit both. Now, granted, that does mean occasionally we may push an update out that has a very specific targeted enterprise-only fix. I mean, that's natural. Usually that comes late in a train's kind of life cycle. We'll find some last minute, there's something here we want to address for the enterprise crowd. Fine, but you don't have to click the update button if it's not interesting or relevant to you, and that goes for, frankly, every update. Although I do encourage people to stay updated. That's usually just best practice.
Yeah, and the benefit, of course, you make one software build. It means we don't have to host two entirely separate update packages for every little update we do. It just go grab the update file and apply it to all of your systems.
Yeah, it is so much easier for us on an engineering side too to have like one universal image to support that way. Because once you fork it, it's like, oh, that image had this version of this library or this version of the code or which branch was. Oh my God, it gets complicated. And
Yeah.
as engineers, we prefer simplicity whenever possible.
One build to rule them all.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
of course, the other kind of elephant in the room that I think comes out of the woodwork every time we have an announcement or talk about something like this is, is this the death knell for BSD? So
Now,
I'll take
every
a
time.
moment
Go ahead.
and just opine a little on this because this is kind of my background. So of course
You
not.
might have some history and opinions on
A,
FreeBSD,
a
Chris.
little history, and every time this happens, it stirs the hornet nest and people come out of the woodwork, and that's fine. But no, BSD sinks or swims on its own merit, regardless of what TrueNAS does. Yes, TrueNAS has moved on to fresher and greener pastures, but there's still lots of folks on the FreeBSD side who love that operating system and are going to continue to do so. I don't see that changing. My personal opinion on FreeBSD just as a whole, if you guys will indulge me for a moment, is that it's mostly just transitioning is kind of the sense I get. It's less of a kind of serious general purpose commercial entity like it used to be. We don't see it in the data center as much. It's a little bit more hobby niche, and not that you couldn't use it for business or commercial things, of course, but it's just very targeted and useful for specific use cases. Naturally, that's going to have a fan base. That's to be expected. I mean, there's still fan bases for Solaris. I don't know if anyone really likes Open Server anymore. I started on it. I can't claim to love it, but it was a thing.
Open Indiana, I think, is still a big thing, and IllumiOS. There's still a certain crowd that loves their Solaris, and I mean, I ran it myself for a while for certain storage servers.
We all have favorites, and we all get attached to certain things, and that's fine. But every time we talk about this topic, it seems like on the socials, of course, we get some of the usual suspects. They jump out of the woodwork with their, typical BSD for life comments, and that's the only thing I'll ever run, which I get it. Hey, I'm passionate about tech. We all are. We all have our favorites and things we love. And also there's a little bit of human psychology behind that, I think. Just putting my psych cap on for a second. I think as a project shrinks or goes in through a transition, the ones who kind of stick with it are going to be the true believers, and they're going to be the more vocal people. So that's very common. I expect that. Of course, the more common, business users, folks who aren't passionate one way or another, they tend to leave quietly. That's just how it works. Again, people just go where it makes most sense, but then they don't make a big deal out of it. They're just solving a problem. They're not there to be passionate about one particular variant or another. It's kind of like, almost like distro hopping on Linux. I don't have to make a big deal if I install a different distro on one of my devices. It's just another Linux.
Some people make a big deal about which distro they're using, but
some people do, and that's great. I love passion. I want people to be passionate about those things. So have at it. But that's just kind of my 2 cents on the whole thing going on in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the other things people were saying is, oh, hey, I kept running core because it had this particular feature in there. And, maybe there's a good example of one that, Incus is a fantastic example here, because a lot of folks really liked that jails feature in core where they had a lot of customization and they were being able to run a really customized container. So that's coming out in Fangtooth with Incus and LXC. So
yeah,
that's kind of like an upgraded version of everything that jails commonly offered there.
Absolutely. I think another one was some folks wanted OneDrive support for Cloud Sync. That looks like we're going to try and get that into Fangtooth as well. Yeah. Again, little thing, but it matters to some folks. That's their preferred storage or cloud storage provider. So, yeah, in this case, though, if there are little edge things like that or still features that you're like, oh, I really missed that, make a case for it. That's what the forums are for. We specifically put together a feature request section on the community forums where you can go and basically put your proposal. Here's what I want. Here's what it solves. Here's what I want it to be able to do. Details are good, so please be detailed. And then let people vote on it. Because what we have to do on the business side is we have to look at that and decide, is it worth us saying, let's go put an engineer on that for a day, weeks, months, depending on how big the feature is, right? And if it's a feature that's going to take months and it only has like 2 votes because very few people are using it, that one's probably going to be at the bottom of the list. But if, I see lots of votes on a feature and it makes total sense, then yeah, let's do it. But again, we need that feedback because there's so many users of TrueNAS out there. It's kind of hard to to see what everybody's doing. You have to speak up sometimes. And you might find out you're one of, a few or one of many, but somebody's got to take the lead and put the noise out into the ether.
Yeah, put the ticket in, and then everybody can sort of have eyes on it and evaluate it. And again, like you said, Chris, we do have to do that triage side and sort of figure out, we only have so many hours in a day. We have to pick and choose and prioritize them. Putting those feature requests in and letting people get their eyes and their votes on it really helps that process of helping us, TrueNAS side, triage which features are the most important, which ones you want to see in the upcoming versions.
Absolutely. I mean, we're always looking, we do 6-month cycles. So we're now looking, of course, at the fall release of 2025. Fangtooth's pretty locked in at this point. We got beta coming up next month, but we are still looking at the fall release. Okay. What needs to be on that? And then what about next April's release as well? So put it in early rather than late. Like, get us that info way up the front so we can gauge feedback and support, and then we'll see where it lands on the roadmap.
Absolutely. Hey, speaking of exciting new things, let's take a breather from some of the TrueNAS news for a moment. Let's talk about all the fun and exciting hardware that's been announced at CES there. I mean, I feel like we're coming into Bizarro land now, where we've got AMD cranking out some fantastic CPUs, and we got Intel's Battle Mage being a good showing in the GPU land. Like, what's going on here is, the sky is falling.
Everything's been flipped upside down.
Absolutely.
And NVIDIA, of course, is still doing NVIDIA things, but it's neat to see a 3-person horse race now on the GPU side, where people are all pushing different directions, and we have an actual cage match now. This is great.
Yeah, the mid-range is starting to get really exciting, and I mean, all of the performance speculation coming out over the various new GPUs coming out. I mean, leaks just came out just before recording here about the the new AMD cards. The 9070 XT apparently had a little bit of performance leaks show up. There's all the speculation about how much of NVIDIA's performance is actual raster performance and how much is just AI generated frames. I mean, it's getting kind of wild out there. So it's probably a good case for everybody to say, hey, let's wait for some numbers to show up. Get hardware in hands and go to your trusted reviewers. Pick multiple sources and try to collaborate it. GPU is probably the most expensive thing that's going to be in your unit, unless you're, one of us crazy guys building storage. So, take the time to look at it and do some crucial evaluations on what you're going to do. But obviously, I mean, the answer is yes, TrueNAS will likely support these new GPUs over time. It's probably one of the benefits of that more modular NVIDIA driver packaging that we introduced in 2410. And we're going to refine it further in 2504. I know that some people had a couple challenges. And I think you got some plans to refine this and extend it further as well, right, Chris?
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be just NVIDIA drivers. Since we're using the systemd extensions capability, it may be that we offer some other optional extension packs. So if you're a heavy command line guy, there might be tools that we can have available in an extension pack that not everyone would normally need, or maybe don't play well with our enterprise feature set for STIG and security reasons and all that good stuff. But we still want to make them available. So we have options now. We expect to see that refined. That'll just get better as time goes on. And I'll take this chance too to remind folks on the kernel side, we update once a year. We usually follow the Linux LTS releases. So in this case, we're getting 6.12 coming up in the Fangtooth release. So that's what you'll want to look at when you're getting ready to go make that next GPU purchase. Does it have kernel support in that particular version that we're shipping? And then know that next year around the same time, we'll be updating to, 6.20 or 7. Who knows? I have no idea what Linus will call it at that point.
Whatever's out at that point. Although we do appreciate, we had a couple of early reports come in from our community. We've had some Battle Mage B580 users drop in and say, hey, the card seems to be working great. We had to do some early work on the Fangtooth nightlies. I think they said they had to add some firmware blobs in from Intel, but they showed that it was using that new XE driver that landed in 6.12. So hey, we appreciate the early reports from our community out there in the field, grabbing the latest and greatest and letting us know how it's working.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So keep that feedback coming. By the way, I've been shocked how many people are running the nightlies. That is unusual. So kudos to all of you who are brave enough to help us kind of test, and you're basically on the developer branch. So that feedback is appreciated.
Means there's a lot of hype for Fangtooth. I mean, we had a lot of excitement for Electric Eel with the Docker and the RAID Z expansion. Sounds like Fangtooth could be just as exciting, but hey,
I think so.
Great opportunity to segue back into talking about Fangtooth. I know you just did you put some new changes in the UI in the nightly. So you want to talk about those quick?
Yeah. So I'd mentioned in a previous episode how the Incus LXC support had landed, 5 weeks ago, maybe something like that. We did a little demo of it, but now the VM side of that is starting to land as well. I say starting to land. It's partial. There's still other things we need to get done before I'd say it's ready for more functional, wider testing. So maybe another week or two, and then we'll go ahead and do a demo here, and I can kind of show it off. It'll be cool. I'm excited for people to see how easy it is to use both LXC and VMs in one UI. It's the same interface. You just have nice selectors that say, ooh, I'm deploying this Debian thing. Do I want to do it as an LXC container, or do I want to do it as a native VM, right, with KVM? It's awesome that you have that option. It's just a click or two away. You don't have to go navigate to a whole different section of the UI to, pick and choose between. Now, obviously, that only works with Linux things to have that LXC option. If you're going to do Windows, you're on the KVM side, or you're doing BSD or some other operating system, you're on the KVM side. But still, it's nice to have it kind of combined into one functional interface that'll just make it easy to manage and mix and match as you need. But related to that, I will mention or use this opportunity to talk about the plan going into Fangtooth is to make this the only VM interface for 2504. So that means the legacy one's going to be retired. The legacy interface, for those who haven't kept up or maybe are new to the TrueNAS ecosystem, that was more or less a direct port of the one from the core Beehive days, which I think landed in 11.3. It's been a while now, so forgive me if my memory is not perfect on that, but it's been quite some time. It hasn't really. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was 11.3. That was when you did that last refresh to those, especially. The VM support was there before, but it was definitely an even earlier phase. But 11.3 was when you had that big overhaul. I do remember being there for that point. That was a big shift, and it's like you said, it's probably definitely due for that overhaul now to look a little bit more modern.
Well, that was one of those features when we did the initial version of Scale. We just ported that kind of raw over from core. We just said, okay, well, instead of Beehive, it's KVM now. Let's just kind of make that work. And we did, but we kept intending to go back. And at some point, that section just needed to be rototilled and cleaned up and done right in kind of a native KVM mindset. And Incus was a perfect opportunity to do that. So what does that mean for you if you have VMs already in the old system? Well, again, don't panic. First thing to do anytime you're doing storage things is never panic. There's always a solution. So what it's going to mean in this case is we're going to have an option to import the disks into the new UI and Incus interface. We're going to be working on the process and documentation for how to do that. That's usually pretty easy because VMs are essentially a ZVol, is what you're pointing it at, or maybe a file on a disk. Should be fairly straightforward to do. You may ask, well, why didn't you do auto migration like you did with K3s to Docker? Fair question. In this case, we looked at it and decided the implementations are too different, that it's not a one-to-one parity thing where stuff will map cleanly over. We'd have to make weird decisions and logic choices, and it wouldn't make complete sense to do an auto migrator like that. So we decided to go the manual route. Again, it's a one-time thing. Once you import your disk image, set it up again the way you want, give it the amount of CPU and RAM you want to assign, life should be good, and it moves on. There'll be a few differences too, like when we're going from the old system for the remote desktop, we use Spice. The new system brings back VNC, which a lot of people have asked for, which is a shame because I actually think the Spice protocol is better in a lot of ways, but it just has not gotten the traction from the community and the ecosystem. The client support for it is pretty rough. So it'll be nice to have VNC again, even if it is, I guess, the more primitive of the two.
Yeah, it's the more stable, we'll call it that one.
Yeah, more mature. Maybe that's a better word for it.
There's
the
the
more mature
buzzword.
Protocol. Say that's the marketing friendly word.
Absolutely. Well, I'll make sure I'm using that one then. So when I'm just going to think back there, you said importing disks. I mean, obviously that's between our existing interface and the new one. Hey, maybe that's a good feature request to say, hey, if we're going to have some sort of functionality, maybe it's possible for us to be able to start importing, OVAs and things. Extracting disks might be an interesting way to be able to say, let's deploy these VMs onto TrueNAS and have some custom packages that can do that for us.
So you jumped ahead a little bit of, this is where we want to go. So say you called it, that is where we want to go eventually, is you can just throw a VMDK and say import and life goes on, right? Or an OVA or whatever.
Absolutely.
Some of the code for that's already landed in the back end. I actually wrote personally some of that myself. That was fun. That was a little Python project. But some of that is in. I don't know if that's going to make it fully into the UI for Fangtooth. Again, we only have 4 or 5 weeks here before everything needs to get wrapped up feature-wise. But definitely in a future version, we'll start exposing that, I guess, at a wider degree in the UI.
Yeah, we do have a couple requests for that every so often that comes up. Some people, usually it's Home Assistant. They want to run that in a VM, and they say, what's the best way to get it into TrueNAS? And certainly we've got some community powered solutions where they'll take that file and they do a little command line manipulation to basically say, take this file and expand it into a ZVol. But again, if we can wrap that into something nice, pretty in the UI, it'll make it that much easier for everybody else who wants to do the same thing.
Absolutely. That's what that middleware bit does exactly, is it takes your file and it's basically inline converts to raw, which then DDs it out to a ZVol. And then once it's on a ZVol, you can fire it up and you get all the great performance and all that good stuff.
And then you can treat it just like any other ZVol you want. You want to replicate it, you want to snapshot it, you want to back it up to somewhere else. Hey, it's just another ZVol. Do whatever you want.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's the way to do it. But anyway, I'm excited. This is a good progress that we've made here in Fangtooth, and even more excited for this fall with Goldeye. I think you'll see some of these things mature even more.
Exactly. Hey, I think we'll have another good beta turnout for Fangtooth with all the exciting things that we're landing in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here, our last topic for the day. And again, a little not TrueNAS related, but kinda. It's Linux related. It's something I'm passionate about. I know Kris is passionate about as well. 2025, we just kicked off the new year. Is this the year of Linux on the desktop? At this point, it's kind of a joke to ask that because it's been said for so long.
Definitely this year. Chris. Definitely this year.
It's going to happen this year. No, we're going to at least convert you. That's the question, is can we get your gaming system over? But I don't know. Will it be? Will it be? Who knows? I suspect it gets closer every year. The big secret weapon, though, I'm more and more convinced, is what Valve does with SteamOS. I think that's the real thing that's going on behind the scenes, which is going to really make this a reality for a lot of folks.
Absolutely. I mean, even just looking at the handheld of the Steam Deck, that was a sort of a major beachhead for theirs to say, hey, this is putting Linux into literally the hands of a whole ton of gamers and making it extremely, easy to use, mostly transparent for a vast catalog of games. There's still some challenges with, games that use their proprietary anti-cheat systems, things that don't work quite so well. But even like Lenovo's just announced that they've got the Legion Go S, and Steam said it's actually going to be powered by SteamOS. Mm-hmm. So they're looking to sort of try and take away some of that Microsoft dominance there as well. Because Microsoft used to say, hey, we're going to offer you, maybe it's a discount to the OEM to say you'll get a less expensive version of Windows to be able to put under this handheld. And Steam just came along and said, well, or you can put SteamOS on it, and, well, that'll be free.
Yeah, absolutely. I say the vendors have to think long and hard about that. That's a really tempting offer now. But absolutely. I think gaming in particular has been one of those really tough to crack bastions. Just Windows has been dominant there for so many years. Mac kind of got into it for a while, but never really took off. But I think Valve is kind of doing smart things now by focusing on enabling, again, the vast catalog of games to be played on a not Windows system now. That's huge. That kind of changes a huge ecosystem and market. And as Microsoft continually seems to screw up the experience and the privacy of Windows desktops, the opportunity is ripe for some other Linux vendors to start grabbing a bit more of that action. I think Steam's going to help kind of lead the charge on that. My own personal prediction is I think one of the biggest challenges of Linux distro becoming dominant is really the ease and availability of applications. Like I install Ubuntu, it's what I'm running here. For the most part, everything kind of just works. It's nice, the OS, everything's great. Where you really have challenges, I think, putting myself in somebody who's not a Linux or Unix person's shoes, it's really applications. So like Snap on Ubuntu, it's quirky, it's not super great. Same with Flatpak, maybe it's a bit better, but still kind of not there. A lot of what's kind of cool now to see that we didn't have a decade ago is a lot of third-party programs now offer Linux versions natively, which is cool. But you go to the website and it's like, oh, okay, it's a deb file or it's an RPM. Oh, it's a snap. Oh, nope, it's an app image. Oh, nope, it's a tar.gz, and now you need to go extract and run some scripts. That's a tad confusing to non-technical folks, and it just breeds confusion generally. I don't see that being viable on the desktop.
Excellent. If only there was a company that had a fantastic existing app catalog that would handle things like installation, updates, distribution of software, payments. Can you think of any particular software that's made a lot of inroads onto Linux lately, Chris?
Weird. Is there one that people are already familiar with on Windows that just freaking works? And people like it and stuff. So, I mean, obviously we're talking about Steam in general here, but I'm sure somebody at Valve has thought of this already. And if not, I'll send you my notes. Like, But I can't be the first to see this, right? We can't be the first to talk about this, but how cool would it be to see Steam become that universal package manager on Linux? If gamers can easily click and install games, and gamers are busy, they don't want to waste time fiddling under the hood. For the most part, I'm a little weird. I like the fiddling, but most people don't. But if you can install games from your catalog and then also go click and grab Discord, grab your media editor, grab your audio editor, your streaming tools, or whatever other, non-gaming tools that you need that you would traditionally run on your Windows desktop in a brain-dead, simple-to-use Steam interface that does updates and it just runs on your favorite Linux distribution of choice, whether it be SteamOS or maybe it's Ubuntu, whatever, that's huge. Yeah. That enables a whole class of people to go and, embrace Linux fully. I won't lie, some of my kids still have Windows systems. They do, because honestly, they have a handful of apps that it's just like, I can't be bothered to go and get it set up on Linux for them. Maybe I can make it work, and maybe I will at some point. But if I could just throw Ubuntu on there with Steam and they could self-install everything, holy crap. The era of the Linux desktop is here.
And that's the key. Steam, I know Steam does distribute some apps on Windows, certainly, but Windows it's a known quantity. They say, hey, all of stuff installs in this particular behavior. If it's able to become sort of that glue, that common middleware layer that can say, hey, I understand all of these distros here, and I understand how to install software on them. And maybe it's going to take a one-time configuration by the user to say, hey, maybe you got a games drive, maybe you got an apps drive, you want to put things here or there. But just click the button and Steam handles all of, dependencies and updating and all those different things. Boy, that'd be just fantastic.
Again, I think that's the Trojan horse. And so we'll see. Who knows what happens in 2025? Who knows what Valve does with it? Maybe they do push into that direction. Maybe they say, no, we're going to stay game focused, and that's that. And that's fair. That's fine. It just depends on what their business needs are and what they think they can do. But interesting to see. I'll be definitely watching that with a curious eye. But again, just to reinforce the argument on why we put TrueNAS on Linux, this is the kind of place where I want to see Linux making inroads and really starting to become the dominant force in the industry. Wider user base is always better for all of us. Unfortunately, this is a place FreeBSD didn't even have a seat at the table. Linux is off trying to win these battles to go fight with Microsoft and gaming and all that. FreeBSD is still working on how to package the base system. They've been working on that for a decade now, which is great, and I'm glad people are doing that, but, it's not fighting that bigger picture of how do we really bring open source to the world in all facets of our life. We got it kind of with Android now, so that's cool. Yeah. Big win. Linux on my phone. Great. Yeah. Open source. Great. Now I want to see it on my kids' desktops where they're playing games. I want to see it on all my storage arrays. I want to see it on all my devices. That's awesome. Yeah. And a big win if you're an open source enthusiast in general.
Absolutely. So, hey, maybe it becomes the year of open source, not just the year of the Linux desktop. That's, I think that's a big win for everybody. More access to information, more openness, more freedom. Always a fantastic thing to have.
That's what I'm all about here. Like I said, open is the way to go. Open source is the way to go. Let's see that continue. And maybe this is the year that becomes more accessible to people in a reality.
Absolutely. Hey, that sounds like a fantastic thing for us all. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in again to the TrueNAS Tech Talk podcast. As always, feel free to submit your questions via email to t3@truenas.com. Drop us a message down in the comments section below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe again, ring that notification bell, do the usual YouTube things. Join us on the forums, forums.truenas.com. Share our information, get some of our notes there, join the discussion, and we'll see you next time.